Welcome back to CSin15. I'm Chris.
And I'm Jason.
And it is the perfect time of year to talk about this. January and February are when most people change jobs. But also, as you might have noticed, we took a little bit of a hiatus from CSin15 because Jason and I both changed jobs recently. Before we dive in, Jason, do you want to talk a little about your job change? Then I'll talk about mine, and we can start to cover what it feels like to actually look for jobs in customer success today.
Yeah. So, as Chris noted, they happen often and sometimes they can be very quick. For myself, I ended up going to a company called Vanta. We work in the kind of like the security compliant software space. Super excited to be here. I'm on week 2 right now, so still in the thick of learning and trying to get my feet underneath me, but very much excited for the change. And I think one of the main things that I thought about making that change was looking for a company that was really kind of growing quickly and has that room for growth. I think sometimes it's very easy to find yourself becoming stagnant with where you are. So looking at a company where you see that opportunity to grow up segment, or they as a business continue to grow, think like, funding rounds and things of that nature, massive hiring. Those can be really good signals to think about. So that's why I went with Vanta. Super excited to be here. Super excited to see what comes. What about yourself, Chris? Where'd you land?
I moved over to Clay. I'm actually based in New York now. I think I will be in go-to-market technology for quite a while, but really went to Clay because A, it will be my first forte in kind of a PLG and enterprise product. And I think that's really driving this product growth and also activation of use cases. And I think the really big thing that I look for in GTM products is, can we actually deliver on what customers are looking for from the product, what customers need in the market? And I really think that's where Clay is killing it today. But enough about us. I guess let's talk about what looking for a job in customer success looks like today. What are kind of the best practices? Jason, I know you and I, we both kind of use our network here. So maybe we can kick off with what it looks like to kind of use your LinkedIn network to actually find your next job. Because as we've known, especially now in 2025, cold applying to a job through a job board, their careers page, and not doing anything on top of that. I mean, sure, I'm positive there are some people who are landing jobs maybe through that format, but I think it's not necessarily a super effective way to actually get into a company, especially if you've made a short list of companies you're looking for. But Jason, curious your take on like how to use your network to land your next position.
And 1000% agree. If you're cold applying right now, that is a really tough world to be in. So many companies get, inundated with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications for an individual role, right? So it's tough to cut through the noise at that point. I think for me, the one thing that I have or that has served me quite well, actually, the last 3 jobs that I've gotten in my career have been through my network. Going into Drift, when I went into Drift, it was through a friend that I had in college, right? Me and her were close. She was a recruiter at Drift. I said, hey, I'm looking around, like, how's it going at Drift? And pulled me in, and the interview process went fairly quickly. Moving over into CSin15 and Vanta, it actually was a former manager who I worked with who, trusted me, trusted my work, trusted my ability, and kind of helped me move through that process. And I didn't even have to go on LinkedIn and click apply, right? Like this was all just conversations, having outreach and seeing and kind of keeping that relationship, right? It's really easy for when somebody leaves an organization or you leave an organization to not talk with people who you worked with there. That can be a very big misstep for your future, right? If you're not keeping relationships that you had, oftentimes those people could be in a position to help you down the road. But if you completely cut them off, that opportunity is gone. So for me, using the relationships that I built, working with colleagues, working with managers is something super, super important to do in that job search. And secondary to that, a thing that a lot of people don't think of, customer success is positioned in a very unique way where we can kind of understand what's happening with our customers' businesses. We get close with champions and people who have strong voices within those organizations. That can also be an opportunity for an easy inroads into a new role within one of your customers. If you know that organization inside and out, you can kind of speak to the power of what they do, where you see opportunities, and hopefully use that to leverage a role. So those are 2 ways that I think about the network. What about you on the LinkedIn side, right? Talk a bit more about what you've done on LinkedIn in the past or what's really worked well for you.
At first, I just love that point of, in customer success, we do learn the customer's organization. So we're a pretty quick ramp if you hire us. But as I think about LinkedIn, one of the key things is nurturing that network. I receive a lot of generic outreach from people who are asking for referrals at my current company and at previous companies. And the biggest thing I'll say is if you're reaching out to somebody who you've worked with, but maybe haven't had that relationship that has kind of sustained, doing that personalization and also helping them feel more confident in advocating for you. I think we'll get to this in a second, but quantify your success, kind of talk about like why you're actually interested in the company that that person's working at. I think some of the harder LinkedIn outreach that you're probably not going to get a response from is just messaging somebody and saying, hey, I'm interested in your company. Can you refer me? Because at the end of the day, like, yes, I could probably hand your name off to the recruitment team and say, I don't really know this person, but you're not really giving me a ton of confidence to go and vouch for you.
Uh-huh.
So when you're doing that outreach, I would say prioritize, if you can, a short list of companies you really want to work at. And I think next we'll kind of talk about like how to figure out what company you might want to go to. But be thoughtful and personalized in how you're outreaching to the people you want to refer you into that organization. Highlight yourself, talk about your own accomplishments. Know that the person on the other end might not have, even if you worked with them, known your outcomes and success stories at the company you work together at. So kind of give them a few blurbs to help them feel like, hey, you would be a really great asset to this organization, and make them feel like, hey, I could look really good if I brought this person in. I think that generic outreach, it can often be overlooked of just, hey, can you refer me? Because it is a risk. You're kind of asking somebody to put their name behind you. Even though we know it might be in a lightweight way, it is still advocating. So I think make sure you go in and give them enough material to help them do that process. But as you're doing this outreach, because we both just vetted companies that we considered going to, what do you look for in like those companies that you're targeting to break into?
Yeah. So as I mentioned a little bit with Vanta, was like seeing the growth and overall career growth for me is something that's super important. It's something I looked at everywhere I've went. Seeing the growth of an organization happen so rapidly, knowing that they are the premier name in market, to me, that oftentimes is a great sign like, hey, this is an opportunity for you to go and grow here. As they continue to go, you have that opportunity to continue to go with them, up market, whatever direction the business decides to go in, like there's an opportunity there. If you were looking around and you started to see a company where maybe you're seeing a lot of turnover posted, you're looking at Glassdoor and reviews are a little sketchy, like it's probably going to take a lot more for me to consider going to that company, either from a monetary perspective, or do I know somebody there who can vouch like, hey, yeah, there's been a rough patch, but overall it's good, or hey, what's you're seeing online, just it's BS. Otherwise, it's probably something I'd stay away from. So looking at things like funding, looking at things like recurring hiring, looking at things like positioning in market, oftentimes are super important. And then even more so industry. So I've been in rev tech for 6.5 years prior across Drift and CSin15. I was kind of ready to make a change and move into a different industry and really challenge myself with something new. So switching industries could also be something that you want to look for, or, maybe it's something that you might stay away from. Like, oh, hey, this company checks all the other boxes, but they're an industry I know nothing about. I don't want to deal with having to relearn everything. I'm good. Right. So that's kind of how I evaluate what I think about when I'm starting to, consider my next career move. But truly, again, leaning into that personal relationship side, that kind of helps guide me a little bit in where I go. What about yourself?
I think I'll just lead it with, I feel like anytime I do a job search, when I'm evaluating a company, I am a bit of a pessimist. Check all of the resources. There's so much online now, especially for current employees and customers to give their feedback on the product. And if you're working in customer success, you are going to experience both sides of that coin. You are going to experience the pros and cons of the product and the pros and cons of the internal culture. So check Glassdoor, check Blind, do some research on like what the current employee experience is, but also do some research on like what do their G2 ratings look like? How are they ranking in the matrices that are being posted by like Gartner and other resources? What does the online discourse look like around this product? Are there significant gaps? And I actually 2 roles ago moved from a go-to-market tech into legal tech for a little bit. And one thing I really looked at is relearning the industry map. Being in go-to-market tech, you kind of know who the key competitors are. But I think especially if you're doing an industry change, like look at who those competitors for that industry are, how those companies ranking against them, if there's major downturn. And I think just any like public resources that you can evaluate for who are their investors, what does the experience look like? Are they VC backed, PE, etc.? All of those kind of have different internal cultures. But I think just evaluate as much as you can. Be a little bit pessimistic. I think the best resource, as you mentioned, is if you can actually have a honest conversation with somebody who works there, preferably somebody you previously know and know they're not just trying to sell you on the role. But if you kind of have that like informal one-on-one chat and evaluate a bit. I think maybe with that, Jason, what questions do you ask like an internal person to understand if life in CS there is for you?
I think I probably begin most with like, what does the day look like and what are the expectations around that? there's a variety of different types of CS leadership styles and thereby what they expect their org to do. Something that I tend to gravitate towards is like, I want to be able to control my day and say, hey, you're giving me this book of business. You're trusting me to do what's right. Like at the end of the day, I'm going to make sure we hit all the right numbers and all that good stuff. But like, I want to have that autonomy to say, okay, this is how I'm going to manage this, is how I'm going to manage that. So if I'm talking to somebody and they're like, yeah, every week we're getting looked at based off of getting these three types of meetings and so on and so forth, right? So if there's a bit of that magnifying glass on every minute activity you do, that's probably something that I would stay away from. Something that I would definitely like find value in, as I just talked about, is if I go and speak with somebody and ask that question, hey, what does your day look like? How do you manage your book? Like, are there any expectations from leadership? And they're like saying, I am able to do what I need to do to make sure customers are successful. The biggest expectation from leadership is that my renewal opportunity notes and account notes are updated like once a week. Perfect. I'm in, right? Like that gives me the room to be creative and to work the way that I am or am capable of, I should say, to make sure our customers are successful. What about yourself? What is something that you would ask somebody if you were having that conversation and trying to get like candid feedback?
Yeah, I think I'd echo what you just said there. The only thing I'd add on is cross-functional collaboration and how much of a presence or like seat at the table customer success actually has. One key thing I vet for is, in CS, are you the only person working for the customer? How involved is support? How involved is product? Are PMs willing to get on the phone with a customer? Does it feel like product is listening to customer concerns? Kind of pieces like that, because those are some of the tactical details that I think can often make or break your experience in customer success. And then I think understanding like if there are clear goals, if the team's hitting them, what the book size actually looks like, how many customers are you usually managing? Basically trying to get a good grasp of like what your day-to-day will look like.
Yeah, the book size one I think is something that CSMs can over index on. And I think the book size can be important, but also understand what is the expectations of using the tool, right? Because it might be you do implementation and implementation is really intense. And then after that, all that is necessary is a monthly check-in. And at that point, having a book size that, I'm just going to throw a random number like 70 accounts might not be that bad. But if the expectation is that you are taking weekly calls, you're in the weeds tactically with these customers, helping them set up workflows and do X, Y, and Z, yeah, you're probably going to want a smaller book size, maybe 20 or less. So book size, I think, is good to know, but don't over index on it because how a company uses the product of the business you're at will really dictate how much you are working with them in a face-to-face, in a recurring meetings, standpoint. So be mindful of it, but don't let that be your end all be all would be my one tip. But let's talk a bit about interviewing. So if you're interviewing with a company, what is something that you hit on or that you make sure you are prepared for to go in and speak to? What do you really focus on?
I really focus on having multiple stories, whether that's like save stories, success stories of customers you've grown. I also like to prepare myself with the inverse because I think one question I got stumped with a few years back that I didn't prepare for is talk me through a churn where you feel like you had fault. And I think being ready for stories that are really positive but also stories that might be uncomfortable. I have messed up in customer success. I've been doing this for quite a few years. I've made mistakes. I've learned from them. I think being prepared to evidence that you've had those successes, but you've also had those learnings and you're willing to admit that failure is really beneficial. And then, of course, like qualitative factors and quantitative of what did your numbers actually look like there? Can you speak to a specific number that was accomplished in this situation? Things that will really make them feel like, you'll come into the org and hit the ground running and be a success for them. How about you?
Yeah, the stories, I think it's important to note like your biggest successes and how you got there, but also biggest failures. So getting stumped on that question of like, where do you feel like you failed? I think it shows a lot of like humility and ability to be introspective and learn from your mistakes when you can lead an interview conversation and say, yeah, this is where I messed up. I did X, Y, and Z. It had this negative outcome. Here's how I tried to address it. Here's how I tried to fix it. I think recruiters at that point won't focus so much on the fact that you failed. They'll focus more on the fact that like you created a plan to save it. You created a plan to try and come back from that. And that shows a lot of grit. That shows a lot of like your ability to manage a messy situation. So I think that's super important. I would also say this is more of like, be ready to answer this with a good story is why are you leaving the organization that you're leaving? A lot of companies want to hear like, we know you're probably leaving for the basic reasons of maybe it's money, maybe it's you're not doing well, whatever it is. But being able to articulate that story in a way that shows, okay, like I gave this a fair shake. I tried to make this work. I tried to do X, Y, and Z, and really it's just not for me. And why I'm leaving is because you guys are so attractive, because your organization is X, Y, and Z. You guys are doing, A, B, and C, and that's something I really want to be a part of and help grow, right? You kind of shift the negativity of why you're leaving. You want to address it, but you also want to follow it up with, but I'm excited about you because of whatever the reason is. In interviews too, what's something that somebody could say to you? Like, think about if you're interviewing with somebody who'd be your manager. What's something they could say to you that would be a green flag or a red flag?
Yeah. And I think we'll wrap up on this one, but I think a major green flag for me is that they're involved, that their customer success for them looks like a team sport, and something that the entire organization is involved in. I think the biggest red flag I can hear is anything that points to it's all on the CSM or it's all the CSM's fault there. How about you?
Yeah, that's a good one. I would say green flag for me is probably going to be along the lines of that autonomy. Just the way that I work, like being able to say that I'm going to have control over my book, I'm going to be able to make the decisions I need to make and work it out is going to give me a lot of power. And I like that feeling. Red flag, though, I think in CS specifically, an organization needs to understand that CSMs are still needed. I've seen so much out in market about AI becoming this new thing. AI is going to take over. AI is going to replace CSMs and, so on and so forth. The truth of the matter is AI isn't at the point where it can run a relationship. It's not at the point where it can build trust with a customer. So if I'm going into an organization and I'm hearing them saying, hey, you're going to manage 150 accounts, but you're going to do it with AI and it's going to be great, massive red flag. Like we as there's CSMs for a reason. We're not being replaced yet. AI is not a full human with human emotions yet. So that's something for me that would be a red flag. If AI is involved, like take a beat and see how that organization is using AI at this point in time. It's a great complementary thing to have. It's a great resource to have, but it should not be what an organization leads their entire CS function with. Yeah. So,
Agreed.
but all in all, both of us made the career change. It certainly can be tough out there. Leading with the relationships, leading with your network, I think is going to ultimately be a massive net benefit for anybody who's hunting for a job. And then besides that, be a human, showcase your wins and showcase your losses, or showcase, not showcase. I guess that's a new word for the day. Showcase your wins and showcase your losses because organizations want to see that you're a human, that you are able to learn, and that you are able to come back from something difficult. I think that's a really compelling story. What about yourself? Any tips to end on?
I think just what you said there. Be sure to be human in the process, advocate for yourself. And then I guess my last thing, follow up with everyone. There's probably likely many people in the process. Send those thank you emails, send those LinkedIn messages. Really run this like a sales process, I would say. But best of luck to all those who are job hunting today.
Likewise. Well, if you liked the episode, give it a like, give us a subscribe. We will be having more content coming out soon now that we are back in the swing of things with normal life and normalcy. So stay tuned for the next one. Take care.